Have you ever been walking down the street of a city and thought, this would be a great place for a tree? Maybe not. Have you ever walked down a city street and noticed trees? Have you noticed the species, how they grow, who plants them? All of this connects back to urban forestry and street trees. My name is Maddie. I have taken a class on urban forestry, and I'm really passionate about the subject, and I'm a student at ESF, so I wanted to make this video to kind of talk a little bit about it. I'm going to talk a little bit about what urban forestry is, the type of practices that happen within it, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about the different type of street trees you might see in different types of cities. I was able to gather some footage of some actual street trees here in Syracuse, New York. However, I am going to be using a lot of photos because it is the wintertime, and the easiest way, I will admit, to identifying trees is with their leaves. So, you can identify trees with their bark and their twigs, but it is significantly harder, and even I, who've been studying trees for a while now, have a hard time with it. So we'll be using some photos as well, so you can kind of get to know the trees in their full blooming, full leaves glory. But I think also it's important to see these trees in their sort of more winterized state, because sometimes we forget that they're still important even in the wintertime. So I think it's kind of nice and fun to see them in the winter. So when you're out in the field or on the streets and you're trying to identify a tree, there are a lot of different ways you can go about doing it. So the first thing, of course, is to look at the shape of the leaf, how many lobes, which is the part, let's picture a basic maple leaf in your head, a red maple or a sugar maple. So those little things in between that kind of look like right here, between your pointer and your thumb, like right here, those are called lobes. So you can look at the different type of lobes, you can look at the shape of the leaf, you can look at the stem of the leaf. These are all things that can help you identify a tree. Another thing you can look at is bark. Bark can be a really helpful indicator when you're identifying trees. You can look at the texture of the bark, which is probably the most important part. What kind of patterns might be on the bark. One word that we use to describe certain shapes on bark is called lenticels, which is these lines in the bark, as you can see on this picture that I'm putting up on the screen. So that is one way to do it. Another way that is commonly used in the winter months and spring months, or just any time when the tree doesn't have very many leaves on it, is looking at the buds or the twigs. This is one of the more hard methods, and I'm personally not very good at it, so I'm not going to go too in depth into it. But you can look at the shape and the color of the twigs and the buds, and those can point you in the right direction. There's also a way to look at the way the branching is, the branching pattern. There's alternate and opposite. So opposite, I'm going to draw a picture. Opposite branching looks like this. You see how the branches are right opposite next to each other? And then alternate is like this, right here. So this is alternate and this is opposite branching, and I'll put another example up on the screen. And looking at those can also help. There's only a few species in the Northeast United States, at least, that has opposite branching, and that's maple, ash, and dogwood, which you can remember with a little saying, mad dog. That's what we use, at least. what I use at least, and it helps. So there's also apps and certain things that you can use. There's field guides. If you really get stuck when you're identifying trees, there are lots of different resources you can use to help kind of give you that extra push of what you might need. I personally really like using field guides. This one is for western forests, and it has a little bit of everything in it. Right, see, this technically has a little bit of everything in it, so this is a page on birds, but it also has ones on trees and such. And you can also use, there are many different apps now if you don't want to necessarily go out and buy a physical copy of a book, or that's just not accessible for you. There are many apps out there that are super helpful, and the new technology is really interesting, and a lot of them are made by reputable sources like Cornell Labs, and it's always good to make sure that it's coming from somewhere that is you can fact check with it. Again, they're not always 100% correct all the time, but they can be super helpful to sort of narrow down ideas that you might have of what the tree is, especially if you look at something and you're like, I have no clue what that could be. One that I really like is called iNaturalist, has this little logo, and basically how it works is you can take a photo of any sort of species that you're not sure about and upload it to the website, and other people and other scientists will help you identify it and give you some ideas. I like this one a little bit more than ones like Seek, because it gives you actual like one-on-one interactions with actual people, which I think is super helpful. So yeah, there are lots of different resources out there for when you are identifying trees, whether it be in the forest or in urban areas. So I just wanted to get some of the terminology cleared up before we really go more in depth on some of these other species. So behind me in this tree right here, I have a ginkgo, also known as ginkgo biloba. This tree is a very common street tree. You see it a lot. You might recognize, let's see if we can focus. It's really pretty and fan-shaped leaves. They turn this bright golden yellow in the fall. They're a very common street tree because they're very resilient to their environments and conditions. So at the end of the day, you might be thinking, but Maddie, why should I care about trees in urban environments? Why do I care if there's a tree outside of my apartment or my house? Why should I care? Well, the answer to that is simple. The answer to that is there's many different reasons why you should care. One, trees add a lot aesthetically to places. No. The second reason is if we plant more trees in our cities, it will make the cities less hot during the summer. I personally can't stand the heat, so I think this is great. It really helps cool down cities because of the many buildings. There's this whole greenhouse effect almost, which leads me into my next point. Is it's one of the key things to helping solve climate change, or at least helping it get better and brings a community together. If you're interested, you should keep an eye out for tree planting events in your area, because I can tell you from experience, it is so much fun and it's really rewarding to go for a day and plant 3 or 4 or 5 trees and really feel like you've made a difference. You know, that tree is gonna grow and it's going to be there for a really long time, and you've made your community a little bit better. It's a good thing to do, and it's good to learn about them and learn about the world around you, because you live there and it's, you want to take care of it. So thank you so much for listening to this video. I hope it was informative. Thank you.